Yo, yo, yo. My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel today. We are here to talk about HBO's newish recent show, The Chair Company. It is a Tim Robinson show. If you like Tim Robinson, you've probably already watched it because it is your brand of humor. And if you don't like Tim Robinson, perhaps I can provide some context that might make you want to watch the show. Let's start with spoiler-free review. It's very awkward. It's funny. My sort of standard on comedies is like laughs per minute, which puts it like middle of the pack. I wasn't laughing every single minute. Every single joke isn't funny. Every single cringe thing that happens isn't for comedic effect. It's a weird show, and mileage may vary. I think there are things about it that remind me, obviously, it's a very Tim Robinson show. So if you like I Think You Should Leave, if you liked Friendship, his movie with Paul Rudd, if you can dig that sense of humor, then sure, yeah. But it isn't a straight like comedy. It's not a sketch show, thankfully. But there's like a mystery suspense to it, and there's a surrealism to it. It's almost like I would love it as like a horror show. The horror of sort of mundane life and morbid reality. But it plays itself too straight to be that. Although, there's going to be a second season, I think, is publicly announced by HBO. So who knows what that'll look like, though. So yeah, it's weird, and I think there's a lot of things in it that are worth watching. It's like half-hour episodes. So again, it's 4 hours of runtime, 8 30-minute episodes. So it's not a huge investment if you want to check it out. I think it's worthwhile. I think, again, there are some very funny parts. There are things that'll be memed and a gift forever. Tim Robinson is, I'm going to say, this generation's Jim Carrey for physical humor and face contortionism and like that. It's just so deeply odd. What he finds as funny is strange. Although I find Tim Robinson to be very endearing when he's not in character, like when he's on talk shows, when he talks about Spider League with Seth Meyers and the late night circuit. Like I understand a lot of him, and his humor plays well, I think, to a neurodivergent crowd, because there's some brand of neurodivergence there. I would say more in Friendship than in this show did it feel like his character was autistic. This one leans like, I read it as like schizophrenia. I've seen lots of commentary around OCD. I've seen lots of commentary around just general anxiety and paranoia. But yeah, like there are mental health themes in the show, but it's more where the value is, I think, is it's experiential. It draws you into the feeling of dealing with that more than it portrays it from an outside observer. And I think that's what's deeply uncomfortable about it, right? Like that's why it's hard to watch. There's a brand of yelling, shouting, over the top humor that I just personally don't care for. I never really liked Seinfeld. One, because Jerry Seinfeld is a terrible actor, and it really kills anything for me, any scene that he's in. Two, I grew up super sheltered, so a lot of the humor probably went over my head because I didn't get the references, or just have any real world experience before I left home for college to understand a lot of the humor. Because I do think It's Always Sunny is more my speed than Seinfeld ever was, and my criticism of that is also there's too much shouting, and like that's a Larry David staple, right? That I don't know how true this is. My sense has always been what Seinfeld's humor was Larry David more than Jerry Seinfeld. And so Curb Your Enthusiasm, also another one of those very shouty shows. And so I think it's hard to binge because, like, one, the show's not super pleasant, and two, it's like, why is everybody yelling all the time? Just bring it down a notch, y'all. We don't need to shout. And I also don't feel like there's that much shouting in real life, but maybe that's just me because I certainly, as a marriage therapist, see plenty of people come in and talk about the shouting and screaming matches they had. So like it obviously happens. I just what if we were quieter? Um, all right. So watch it if you're into that. If you want an odd, surreal sort of journey to go on, if you're not familiar with Tim Robinson or you're not a huge fan of some of his other stuff, like again, I think it's a fun journey. I think it's a meandering sort of jaunt of psychological tension and humor. Um, so yeah, I enjoyed watching it. I laughed uproariously at the season finale and sort of the absurdity of the show. So if you can deal with an absurd sort of humor, I've never seen Twin Peaks, which I'm sure a lot of people will be surprised about and also offended about. But I've seen those some comparisons to the David Lynch style of surrealism. Um, so yeah, watch it. It's good. It's funny enough to like get you through it. It is laugh out loud funny enough to get you through the awkwardness, and you might be like, I didn't get it or I didn't like it. So, spoiler free ending now because there are spoilers that need to be talked about. Um, the big spoiler: the episode, the show is called The Chair Company. The show's title gives away our important event, which is Ron, played by Tim Robinson. Uh, public has a big public meeting announcing the mall, talking about it. He's running the project, and he sits down in the chair, and the chair collapses under him, and he becomes convinced. He's pretty convinced from the get go that somebody messed with the chair. He falls. He sees up the skirt of one of his coworkers because he falls backwards as the chair really brutally falls apart, and that also is awkward and uncomfortable. And yeah, and then the show sort of like we see Ron start to obsess, but the show goes on with sort of like some weird office hijinks. There's the like make a mistake party that's just everybody in the office is deeply uncomfortable too. Like Ron, played by Tim Robinson, because it's Tim Robinson, feels very over the top awkward. But a lot of the office hijinks that ensue are very strange. Having a coworker invite you to church is like deeply uncomfortable. Stop doing that. Religious people. No one wants to go to church with you. If they wanted to, they could. There's lots of churches around. If a religion respected people's autonomy, you wouldn't have to invite people to church. So the fact that you are inviting them to church to put pressure on them, you're part of the problem. The guy who was supposed to get the job that was in competition with Ron and didn't get it, like also descends into madness, but off screen, right? Like he gets trapped under his fridge for a couple of days. He throws this very deeply awkward party that because then he got trapped under his fridge, it's fine and everybody gives him a pass. But it seems like there are probably some HR violations that went on at that party. And the HR people are just like deeply bad at their job. They hire a consultant to come in and he like sets up shop and like lives in the office and brings his parents by for some reason. And again, like these are very awkward, uncomfortable things that everybody just sort of deals with while on screen we're tracking Ron specifically. There's all this like I said, like that's what makes the psychological horror component of the show so fascinating for me personally is like what is wrong with everyone in this show? And some of it is so Ron can play off of them, like storyline wise, but like there's a deep discomfort about most of the characters in the show. Ron starts gets threatened as he follows the trail of this chair company, Tekka Chairs. There's no paper trail, and what is there seems to be a front for something else. So he's just off to the races. He gets threatened in one of the funniest scenes in a parking lot where a guy is slowly running away from him and Ron obviously pursues him. And then the guy unbuttons his shirt and then Ron grabs his shirt and the shirt comes off because it's unbuttoned. And like, why would anyone do that? You know, like that would, and then Ron obviously caught up to him because he grabbed his shirt and just because the shirt came off doesn't mean he stopped. Like it's such a weird, hilariously odd scene that's sort of the show is like, why would anyone do that? In the universe the show is sort of created is it's like it's fine, it makes sense in universe, but it's not logical if you think about it for more than a second. And it's funny, but also you're like, the fuck? Like why is that going on? And so I think the that's sort of the show in a nutshell. So anyway, Ron tracks down this guy who threatened him. He finds he's like a security guard, and then he's paying him for private investigator services. And they're unraveling this Tekka, who's owned by Red Ball Media. It's an investment group, and all the people who are on the board are just actors who were in a photo shoot, and like they follow all of these leads. So it's almost like a murder mystery podcast fan becoming obsessed with their own murder mystery in their like tiny little small town. And like that's all weird, right? It's all done very oddly. Mike, his security guard, PI sort of friend, has this like other friend who's a very small human, who hides in Ron's closet during a party. You put a tiny guy in my closet. It's also like a very funny delivery. But again, like it's very odd. Everything about Mike should be setting off alarm bells for Ron, but like Mike's sort of sad and sympathetic, so Ron keeps involving him. And Ron doesn't want to include anyone else because Ron knows he sounds crazy, right? Like when he eventually confides in his daughter and she comes along for the ride. And this is what eventually made me think schizophrenia is some of his family members are like, is this the Jeep tour thing again? In which like his dream to do Jeep tours was derailed by his own intensity around that dream. Um, but the idea was sort of planted there, and like there's a genetic component to this. Same with OCD, same with anxiety. I mean, it's not like schizophrenia is so much more of a genetic component than other mental health issues. But it did make me wonder if like she's stressed. Natalie is the daughter. She's stressed about getting married. She gets pulled into her dad's sort of thing, even so going so far as to help him investigate this tiny town that is purchasing all the chairs. And so what eventually ends up happening is Ron does sort of mostly solve the mystery. Mostly, he ends up at this party. Who's an investor for his wife's company, and he like pulls on enough threads where she just comes out and says like, "It's me." Like, and it's interesting because again, the show starts so small. I like a local story. Um, the conspiracy isn't to harm Ron in what we're left with our knowledge at the end of season one isn't to harm Ron, but to get away with basically like this embezzling scheme where the company is selling chairs. The company is a front to like basically recycle these chairs to make a perpetual profit off of them. And like this small town city council is involved, and this group of investors are involved, and like it's just like a money making scheme that would be fraudulent if anyone knew about it. So they're protecting, but it's not like these evil overlords are attacking Ron. It's he literally fell backwards into this fraudulent scheme. And because he took it so personally, we have to track all of these things. Now, the show doesn't wrap fully. Ron wants to walk away and can't, and finds one last clue that opens up even more mystery for the eventual season two. Um, but it's interesting, like Ron's fragility mentally is juxtaposed by his ability to continue to go through work. He like is project lead on this thing. He honestly, while like losing his mind, manages all these other crazy people somewhat fairly well, and navigates like the corporate speak on the mall and everything else. The mall's going to Canton, Ohio, and the YouTube comments on everything about the mall are mad that there's no like Hall of Fame reference. Like Canton is football. Like, well, I guess I'm not from Canton, so I don't know. But you have the Football Hall of Fame. You don't even have a team yourself, right? Like, I don't know. Um, I married someone from Michigan, so the dislike of Ohio in our house is real. Um, and so like Jeff is the big investor, and Jeff's like weird. he goes on this trip and falls in love with like Santa Fe because he gets drunk and his masculinity is threatened by one of the other CEOs at this retreat thing that he's at. And then Ron pushes him like pretty gently. Um, and then everybody's like talking about how he got manhandled, and that really makes him mad to the point that like he wants to bring Ron back, even though like HR wants to get rid of Ron for shoving him. And like the shove was inadvertent, and my sort of sports brain is Jeff put his hands on Ron first. Like, but the second guy gets flagged, right? This is the thing I work on with teens and other people often is like, you can't retaliate. And this has been ingrained in me as an athlete for most of my life, especially like in the sports where I wasn't that good as a basketball player. I didn't get tall till later in life. I wasn't that gifted of a basketball player. I was good enough to be playing, but I was always sort of like the second best player on the team, which is not impressive, right? And so like guarding the other team's best player so that if I fouled out, we still had a chance was always sort of the impression I got. And I took that to heart, which was like messing with people, holding their jerseys, untying their shoes, like doing all the stupid shit that irritates somebody else. So when they eventually get frustrated with you and shove you, they'll get a technical foul and you won't. Like if you're not that good of an athlete, this is a well-known thing. Like the show Shorzy, I've done a review of that, is all about this. How Shorzy is not the best athlete, but he messes with everybody to bring them down to his level where he can compete with them. So you just don't retaliate. So that whole scene also bothered me because Jeff instigated and then Ron shoved him. But like I think in the corporate world, anytime you put your hands on somebody, like that's a problem. But like Jeff's involved in the fraud, we come to realize because he's mad Ron leaned on his wall, and in the wall is a secret bookshelf with all the evidence that Ron needs. Again, the show goes a little off the rails at times. Um, and then they're like singing karaoke, one of the other CEOs and Jeff and Ron, as Jeff's trying to bring Ron back onto the project. And like, that's how Ron puts it all together because Jeff gives him his phone. No, no one does that. And then is like, listen to my other tracks. And one of the tracks is the Red Ball Media Waiting theme song on the voicemail that Ron listened to for like 17 straight hours. So it's not great. Mike, as the other big character, is the PI, sort of investigator. And in the season finale, we learn that like Mike doesn't have a family. He was the recipient of a heart donation, an organ donor. And so he got to walk this girl down the aisle because it was her dad's heart that he was donated. And so like they thought it'd be a nice thing of like, you can walk her down the aisle and then she'll have like her dad's heart. You hear like some of those heartwarming, touching stories. And like Mike becomes obsessive about this family and wants her to like refer to him as dad, and then like also starts hitting on her. And it's just very weird. And like what has always sort of felt off about Mike is proven to be true, that like, yeah, he's odd. And because Ron called him quote unquote family, that Mike really like gets lost in the delusion. So we have all these characters who are sort of delusional compared to the grand delusion that is like all the investors putting money into a mall. Nobody wants a mall. It's 2025. And like the fraud of this small town government and their group of investors and all these people who are on the board being like, so you have this like tiny conspiratorial thing that Ron's circling of like, why is somebody after him for the chair? And then you have like the weird offshoots that the HR circles, which are like nothing burgers. And then you have like Mike, who's like obsessive, and you have all these obsessions going on. And in the backdrop, the horror of it all is like, right, the capitalists keep getting richer while watching the young people or the regular people scurry around, chase their own tails. I did just watch Eddington not that long before I started watching The Chair Company. And so I had that in my mind too, of like, right, the villain all along is the people who are fleecing everyone and just making money off of this hand over fist while people fight over their stupid shit and struggle to survive in their day-to-day lives. And you know, Ron going back to this company is something he didn't want to do in the first place, his wife being so stressed while, you know, trying to get her company off the ground, their kid who's trying to get a basketball scholarship starts drinking, and then it comes out that he doesn't want to play basketball. he wants to do stop animation. It's like, okay. Which again, like we shouldn't laugh at that. That shouldn't be a punching line. Like that somebody could make art that way and live off of that is should be a reasonable expectation in our society, right? Like the idea that basketball provides you a much better outlet than being a stop animation artist. Like I don't know the market on stop animation, but I do know all the statistics that say less than 1% of athletes are ever going to turn their sport into a career. So the idea that like one is preposterous and one isn't, I think is valid. Like I think the idea that stop animation as a dream is laughable, but basketball star isn't. Yeah, everything's made up in our society and we've taken all the wrong meanings to heart. We've prioritized and monetized all the stupid shit. And the important stuff that could have any sort of meaning is been devalued. Ron missing out on his family, Ron bringing the adopted dog home, Ron like everybody's missing everything that has any meaning while they pursue this stupid bullshit. And I think that's what the show is about, right? Like the chair company. We're following the wrong thing where we sat down. Who we blame for our mishap when we tried to sit down is all wrong. Like, yeah, that's the psychological horror of it. What's wrong with Ron? From a psychological perspective, the therapist in me says like he's really hard to diagnose. I think he's an amalgamation of several different mental health issues. He does have some of that obsessiveness of like an OCD, but it wouldn't truly be OCD because he doesn't have the compulsion attached to it. He just has the obsession. He seems to be anxious, but again, now I will say the anxiety piece is interesting because he misses some very obvious things that are threats to his safety. But that is how I see like real anxiety is people tend to get fixated or ruminate on small or unlikely to happen things and then make really poor decisions with safety elsewhere. So that part is real, but again, like it's so ludicrous as to be not diagnosable. I don't want to say it's too ludicrous to not be diagnosable. It just doesn't fit in any sort of like category. And again, and if you've watched any of my work for any period of time, you know that I don't like diagnosing and the DSM is stupid and deeply flawed. But like, is the show trying to make some commentary about OCD or anxiety or neurodivergence? I don't think so. If anything, it reminded me of a schizophrenia type thing, which again, like generally slowly happens over time as you hear auditory hallucinations in your head long before you start having visual hallucinations, generally speaking. And that break with reality is very disconcerting because it's slippery like that. Is Ron under a great deal of stress? Yes. Is his wife under a great deal of stress? Yes. Are both the kids under a lot of stress? Yes. Like, yeah, I think the show is about like how we make ourselves crazy, not clinically so. Although there's an argument to be made that some people should, but like, right, what's the response? Go to therapy and be a medication. That's not my response. I don't push medication, but the idea that like, yes, some of this is crazy making, and the setting, the trappings for all their crazy making is they're so worried about money that they can't enjoy each other's company. That is late stage capitalism. Sucks. What if we could just like make a living? What if we could just afford to live? What if living didn't have an affordability attached to it? What if we just got to live and then what we want to do with our time on top of that was gravy? That'd be cool. Team collapse over here. Yeah, the chair company. It's deeply uncomfortable. It's very odd. It's hilarious. It's funny, bordering on hilarious. I would say there are hilarious moments, most if not all of the episodes. It's a tough binge. I might encourage you to space it out if you're going to watch it. And yeah, it was also like fun enough to like watch. And I'll watch season 2. Season 1 ended on like not even a cliffhanger. It just sort of was like, this wasn't about anything. And then it ends, and like not everything's tied up. So maybe it will pursue the storylines, but I hope it's just a separate, ridiculous, ludicrous story in season 2, and it isn't connected to this at all, because that's way funnier. Funny in the way that like I enjoy playing a board game for like 8 hours that then everyone dies at the end. Um, because that's life. I don't know. I don't know why that tickles my sense of humor so much, but the absurdity of it just sort of ending where it did was very funny. So yeah, it's funny. It's enjoyable. I'm not like a huge Tim Robinson fan. I loved Friendship, his movie with Paul Rudd. I really enjoyed. I've not sat down and watched all of I Think You Should Leave. I don't love sketch comedy, and like that's coming from somebody who can quote a lot of Monty Python and man Mitchell and Webb and what are some of the other sketch shows like. But again, the reality of even if you're a fan of those shows, The Mighty Boosh, they're not funny all the time, right? Like Monty Python, by and large, Monty Python's Flying Circus, the show, by and large, is not funny. Dead Parrot is hilarious, right? Like Ministry of Silly Walks is funny for like a sight gag. Like The Argument Clinic is one of my other favorite sketches. I can probably repeat those verbatim because of how many times I've watched them and just sobbed while I was laughing so hard. And the show in its entirety, getting its full DVD set, is a thing I did. Most of it's not funny. There's a lot of humor in there that doesn't work. It's like watching it's the difference between like watching clips of dropout shows online or watching an entire episode. It's like, right, when it's very funny, it's top tier, and the rest of it is like, man, a bunch of theater kids improving is not always going to be funny. Obviously. That's why you don't go to improv shows and they don't sell out stadiums because it's a lot of misses for the few hits that it gets. When you get the best of the best doing it, then it can reach some incredible heights. But sketch comedies hit and miss. And so, yeah, I'm not like a Tim Robinson defender. I think again, when it's a funny sketch, it's very funny, and it's not all funny. And that's sort of the show. But for a like narrative theme to put around his sense of humor, like this worked pretty well, I thought. And it's absurd sometimes, but like I don't know, not more than like Netflix's Mindhunter, if you think about it. Not more than like CSI or NCIS or whatever bullshit is like pop culture #1 show on TV. It's all absurd. The show's just letting it be absurd and like pointing at it and being like, isn't that fucking weird? Instead of pretending it's all normal. A normal response to a society that is collapsing is not to act like everything's normal. So this show nails that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Who knows what will be happening with Netflix and HBO and whatever is being purchased with Warner Brothers. So season 2 was announced, but we don't have any information on what that's going to look like. Tim Robinson, I'm drawing a blank on his writing partner, who's also a very funny human. He's in the show too, but like as a very, very small side character. But yeah, they were hush hush about season 1's premise and anything about it. And so I'm not expecting a ton of info for season 2 before it comes out, which probably wouldn't be, probably be like another year before that happens, right? So might be a wait for season 2, but season 1's funny in sort of that like premium HBO comedy, like The Rehearsal, some of the other things that I think are like very funny, but like not sitcom funny. I don't know. It's a hard show to like put in a box, which makes it enjoyable, I think. I enjoyed that it was odd and hard to put in a box. And its ending made me laugh a lot because the punchline is that wasn't about anything. And it might be. Maybe they'll finish the story in season 2, which I think makes the end of season 1 less fun, but we shall see. Okay, thanks for stopping by. You could have been, anywhere on the internet, and here you are with me, and I appreciate that. If you like and subscribe, that helps other people find my work. If you have something you would like me to talk about the mental health concepts of, I do song reviews and talk about shows and movies and what have you. So drop down in the comments. Let me know what else you would like me to talk about, or, type your favorite Tim Robinson quote in all caps. And yeah, that's what I got for y'all today. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Peace.